don't know about you, but I love a good before and after photo comparison. You see them all the time for lots of different things. Like you'll see them showing somebody's glow up over time or their fitness journey, or my personal favorite, the home transformation pictures. Like when people do a project around the house and they're like, I completely redecorated this room. I love the before and after. I think we all love a good before and after because if we're honest, most of us forget that people can change. We tend to think that the way a person is now is the way that they're always going to be, right? Like when we've interacted with a person in a particular way several times, we tend to think that the traits they have, that those are permanent, that that's who they're always going to be. You know, you think your sister will never stop borrowing your stuff without asking. Or you think that your brother is always going to be annoyed with you. Or you think that your parents will always be strict. Or that your best friend will always be super talkative. Or that your coach is never going to stop yelling. Whoever it is, we see these people and we often think that they're just not capable of change. That the person we see in front of us is all that they're capable of being. And to be honest, I think a lot of us apply that same thinking to ourselves. If you're like me, you've probably had things about yourself that you've wanted to change, and then you feel like you've tried and you just haven't been able to change them. And so you start to wonder if change is even possible for you, or if you'll always be this way, that the traits that you have that you don't particularly like, if you're stuck with them because change just seems too difficult. You know, sometimes when we feel like things are going well, we actually don't want anything to change. Like when we're making good grades and our friendships are all going great and the person we like likes us too, and we don't mind if things kind of stay the way that they are. But when things are hard, when we're struggling with anxiety or we're failing math or we're fighting with our friends or we're trying to cover up something we did that we're not really proud of, well then we might really want things to be different. But we fear that they're never going to be, that the mess we're stuck in is permanent. And you might feel this way because of situations or circumstances that you're in. It might be where you live or the tensions in your family or the illness that someone in your family is battling or the fact that your family doesn't have a lot of money. Those sorts of things feel really difficult to change because for the most part, you can't control them. They're beyond anything that you necessarily feel like you have any say in. You didn't choose them, and it feels like it's going to take a lot for them to be any different. So you feel like you're stuck in that constant struggle. Or maybe you feel this way because of the fact that you're in middle school and you feel like you're too young to have any say over a lot of things in your life. The adults in your life seem to still have a lot of control in your world. And when you see your friends, they control when you see your friends, when you're allowed to use your phone, or even if you're allowed to have a phone. And you may feel like you don't have any power to change much of anything in your life because of how young you are. So you do feel very stuck in how things are right now. Or you might feel like change isn't possible because of decisions that you've made. Maybe you've made some mistakes. You've lied, you've cheated, you've covered up bad choices, and now you feel like those things define you and that you'll never be able to change or move on from those mistakes. Or maybe you feel this way because of what you see in other people. You know, your mom, your dad, your best friend, your older brother, maybe they've got some traits that you really wish they would change, but they haven't been able to change them. And you've been told a million times that things will be different, but they never are. Nothing changes. And eventually you start to wonder, is change even possible? Because if the people I love the most, if the people closest to me can't seem to change, then how can anyone change? And so what that does is it leaves us operating under this idea that things are the way they are and it is always going to be this way. And because of that, whether we realize it or not, we're saying that we believe nothing else is possible. That what's happening right now is the only thing that can happen. It's the only way it can be. And all of this brings us back to this story of Zacchaeus. Now, in this series, It's Personal, we've been looking at this encounter that Zacchaeus has with Jesus. And just a reminder, Zacchaeus is a guy with a really bad reputation. He was a tax collector, which meant that he took advantage of the people in his own community. He cheated, he lied, he stole, and all that made him the kind of guy that nobody wanted to hang out with. In most everyone's eyes, Zacchaeus was a bad guy that was just never going to change. But then Zacchaeus has a personal encounter with Jesus. And as you might remember, Jesus spots Zacchaeus up in a tree, and out of the entire crowd, he noticed Zacchaeus. And then Jesus goes over to him and he calls him by name. And even invites himself over to Zacchaeus' house. He says, "Zacchaeus, I am coming to your house today." Now, of course, people were shocked. And I want you to look at what they said in response to Jesus' interaction with Zacchaeus. This is in Luke chapter 19, verse 7. It says, "All the people saw this, and they began to mutter, 'He has gone to be the guest of a sinner.'" So obviously the crowd thought Zacchaeus was a sinner. And it seems like they thought that that's all that he would ever be. Because of that, of course Jesus wouldn't want to be in his home, right? Like, he shouldn't want anything to do with Zacchaeus. You know, that's what the crowd is thinking. Like, why would Jesus want to hang out with this guy? He's shown what his character is. He's shown what he's all about, and that's all he's ever going to be. But as you might remember, Jesus made it personal by stepping in to love and get to know Zacchaeus, regardless of what other people and even Zacchaeus himself thought. And look what happened as a result. This is in Luke chapter 19, verses 8 through 10. It says, "But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, 'Look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor. And if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount.' Jesus said to him, 'Today salvation has come to this house, because of this man. This man too is a son of Abraham, for the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost.'" So when Jesus says that last bit there, he's referring to himself. He refers to himself as the Son of Man. He says the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost. And so I want us to talk about change, because this is a huge transformation that happens in a really brief interaction. You know, in this interaction, Jesus doesn't really say much. He didn't give Zacchaeus a lecture or preach a sermon. He didn't call him out for all of his mistakes and how he was stealing from his community. He didn't limit Zacchaeus to the sum of his bad choices. Instead, Jesus treated Zacchaeus like a person that he cared about, a person he knew by name, a person he wanted to hang out with, a person with the potential to change. And that changed everything. Because of what Jesus did for him, Zacchaeus was able to change. He offered to not just pay everyone back, but to give them at least 4 times what he had taken from them. This personal encounter with Jesus changed Zacchaeus' life. And then it changed his relationship with the people around him. Zacchaeus was now someone who was committed to making things right. This is the change we see in him. He acknowledges what he's done wrong, but he's like, now I'm going to make it right. And that was a huge change. We see Zacchaeus' transformation right before our eyes. And here's what I think is so cool about this story. Jesus doesn't wait to approach Zacchaeus after he's changed. Because a lot of times I think that that's the way that we think God wants to interact with us, that we need to clean up our lives and get it right, and then Jesus will approach us. Instead, Jesus looked at Zacchaeus before and saw his potential to change. And he looks at us the same way. Jesus knows your potential. He knows that no matter who you are or how old you are or what circumstance you find yourself in or what things you've done that you're not proud of, you have the potential to change. Your life can change. Things can be different. You have the potential to step into the full and abundant life that God has intended for you. So, how can we start to see the same transformation in our own lives in the area that we feel like we need to grow? Well, it's important for us to think about how change happens for us. It's the same actually as how it happens for Zacchaeus. We want to start by letting Jesus remind us of who we really are. When Jesus spent time with Zacchaeus, it got personal. It helped him change, and it can do the same for us. If you want to see change in your life, start by spending time with Jesus. This can happen in all kinds of ways, through prayer, worship, journaling, reading your Bible, spending time in your small group, talking to your small group leader. However you choose to do it, I promise you that when you spend time with Jesus, it will change how you think about yourself. Jesus will remind you that you are loved, that you are worthy, that you are created in the image of God, and that you are built to love others. He will remind you of who you really are. And when you know who God has called you to be, when you know that you are deeply loved and worthy, then you will start to live that way. You will start to step into who God has called you to be. You will start to fulfill the full potential that God has placed inside of you. And then you'll look around at the other people that Jesus has put in your life and think about, how do you see their potential? How do you see the image of God in them? How can you encourage them on their journey as they try to grow into who God has made them to be? Remember, it's personal because Jesus knows your potential. He knows who you're made to be. And that's not just true for you, but it's true for everyone around you. So, who in your life have you viewed like Zacchaeus? Who have you believed can't change? Who have you written off as like you're a bad person and you'll always be a bad person? This week, I want to encourage you to take a step to try to think of that person differently, to try to remember that there's more to them than what we see in this present moment. And I encourage you to pray that Jesus would help you to see them as a person that is in process. God has filled them with enormous potential. And I encourage you to ask God to help you see that potential rather than the person that maybe is right in front of you. Ask God to help you see the potential for them like the potential that you have as well. Ask him to help you be a voice of encouragement to them along their journey of growth. Remember, there is no age restriction for change to happen. You are never too young to change. You are never too old to change. As a middle schooler, you have a ton of potential right now, and there's no limit to what your life can be. All change starts with knowing your immeasurable worth. Remember that you are deeply loved and deeply worthy. And when you know that, then you can start to live into who God has built you to be. Remember that Jesus saw Zacchaeus' value even when he was still caught up in this mess. Jesus knew his worth. He saw his potential. Change starts in knowing that you are deeply loved by God. Zacchaeus climbed a tree to see Jesus, and something significant took place when he did that. It got personal. His life changed in a powerful, transformative way. And the same can be true for us. When we step toward Jesus, we open ourselves up to the potential for big change. It's personal because Jesus knows your potential.